Okay, looks like it's showing. Thank you, Britta.
You are live. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to present is the Technical Steering Committee Core Infrastructure Budget Proposal, and this has been put together over a period of some weeks in coordination with the entire TSC. So it's a substantial proposal, as Britta said. Overall, it's something like 58 pages. Thank you to those who have read it. We recommend you do look into that. But mostly this is reference material. What I'm going to do is to give you a quick summary of explaining the motivation for this proposal, why we put it in, and some of the detail about what's included in the actual proposal. So what's the motivation? Well, the primary motivation is to create continuity and certainty for core infrastructure. So the founding entities, as we know, they've done a fantastic job of establishing a top 10 blockchain for us in the form of Cardano. Now this needs to be maintained and propelled in a coherent way under community direction. We want to achieve coverage, including identifying and resolving gaps. It may not be sufficient to have vendor proposed work. We may need to identify the gaps in work and make sure these get filled for the good of the community. And also what we're aiming to do is to ensure coordination both between suppliers, because the projects don't exist in a vacuum, but also between the suppliers and the community. So fundamentally, the proposal will enable the Technical Steering Committee to fulfill an essential constitutional role in providing good technical oversight of core infrastructure work and maximising its delivery potential for the benefit of the Cardano ecosystem as a whole. What is the TSC proposal? It's a request for the community to delegate budget of 82 million ADA for 12 months from June 2025 in order to meet essential core maintenance and roadmap activity. And the budget calculation has been based on IOE rates of $299,000 per FTE. If all the budget is not needed, unused budget will be returned to the community. What we aim to do is to cover essential ecosystem needs, all of the necessary maintenance from whatever suppliers are necessary, sensible development leading to long-term infrastructure improvement, again, from a variety of suppliers, and community engagement at all levels. We aim to cover all of the available core developer resource that we've identified within the ecosystem based on the existing known capabilities. And that's about 1.5 times the 2024 core development team, so 1.5 times what was used in 2024. Focusing on core infrastructure, so layer one open source protocol, common good, and enabling technologies for layer two, but not all of the things that might be needed. That's probably best considered under some tooling budget. So what the TSC proposal is, not just to answer a few questions that have come up in chat, etc. First of all, it's not a proposal to do the work itself. Suppliers need to be contracted to do the work. This is going to be essential anyway, regardless of what happens through the budget process. It's not an attempt to control the ecosystem. Priorities will be set by the community, not by the suppliers, but obviously taking into account technical needs and considerations. Contracts will be negotiated with suppliers and presented to DREPs for consideration. Obviously, no single supplier will have a monopoly on the work, and competition will be encouraged. It's definitely not a race to the bottom because, as I've said in the previous presentation, technical quality, team quality, importance, these are the primary criteria. And value for money implies good quality work at a fair price, not the lowest price work. That's not a good way to conduct the work you want done. It aligns with the specific roadmap priorities that have been identified by the community, but these are not absolutely fixed. So we understand from feedback that TSC has had via its survey that was released in December 24 that these are what the community would like. We're open for the roadmap to be tweaked, obviously aligned with the Cardano roadmap that's been published. We see these things as being important. First of all, transaction throughput, for example, in the form of Ouroboros Laos. And what we expect is to raise this by about 1 software readiness level from SRL 4 to SRL 5. I'll talk a bit more about SRLs later on in the presentation. Transaction settlement, finality, PERAS, anti-grinding, and timeliness market. These are all things that can help with finalizing transactions. Community regards these as incredibly important. Layer 2 infrastructure, Midgard, Hydra, Mithril, all of these have been identified as priorities by the community. And interoperability, nested transactions, Mithril, ZK Fold, Symbolic, these are examples of kind of interoperability tools that the community has sought. Governance improvements are incredibly important. 1694 is a great start, but it needs to be tweaked. We all know it needs to be tweaked. We can see that as we're going through the budget process. So improvements to the on-chain governance are part of the proposal. Our revised stake pool incentives are, these have been a long time coming. We're aware from our contact with stake pool operators of how important this is to them. And then implementation improvements, for example, in the form of log structured merge trees. As a side item, we've put support for alternative node implementations. We're very aware that the community is interested in alternative node implementations. We've put together this roadmap, this proposal, based on the work that was submitted to us. And these proposals have not been submitted to us at the time of speaking. But what we would believe is the correct way to deal with alternative node implementations is to provide necessary support, and then to open up the budget to decide with the DREPs what implementations should be supported. So we're not going to pick or choose the winner here. We're going to leave it open, and we think that's the best way to proceed. It's a relatively light effort that's required. The proposal remains under community control. Technical reporting is going to engage the community, including via technical town halls, technical meetings, TSC and suppliers will be engaged in, and all projects will be required to report results to the community. Priorities can be changed based on community needs. New projects can be started, alternative solutions can be explored. Sensible gating is provided projects, so we have well-defined software readiness levels for all projects, which provides a consistent set of milestones and deliverables, and delivery phases can be enacted prior to full commitment. Assessment involves the community, what project goals should be set, transparent involvement of and feedback to the community in the assessment process. It manages the core risks that have been identified, creates a long-term program of coherent work, which helps with stability, attracts new users, developers, and investors, allows flexibility to meet changing needs, creates a basis for long-term maintenance, deals with both per project and systemic risks via an open risk register, clear set of milestones created systematically from the SRLs, and covers both social and technical risks. Very importantly, it doesn't just do development, it also ensures that integration, rollout, and deployment are considered when necessary. So feature development is only part of the work. Technical coordination between projects and with the community is essential. No single supplier can do that, of course. It requires concerted community effort. And we've been doing that in the course of the last year with, for example, the rollout of Chang and Plomin. What do we mean by systematic software development? Well, we mean a set of well-defined software readiness levels based on ones that are used at IOE. So, for example, what we might see is that to achieve SRL 4.2, which is part of the design stage, a feasibility study needs to be completed. And this sets a gate and a milestone and a way to manage risk for the project by producing these deliverables. So that's just one example. And we've done this for the entire life cycle, from research all the way through to deployment and final on-chain action. What's the budget proposal in outline? Well, what we're asking for are a number of budgets. The main one is for core roadmap development at 47.8 million ADA. Core infrastructure maintenance should be less, but still substantial part of the development. We're estimating that at 19 million ADA. Infrastructure operational costs based on what we know about the operation of the chain at the moment, including cloud provider costs, 404,000 ADA. Applied research is necessary at some points to answer questions about the need to be addressed during development. So we've included some provision for that in the budget of about 6 million ADA. Then we have operational costs for the TSC, including community communications, funding for community events, and limited travel funding to enable good communication with the community. 1 million ADA for support for subcommittees, reimbursement for community volunteers, including the Parameter Committee of the Security Council, the Proposal Triage Group, and technical working groups. And then we're holding back 10% of the budget, roughly, based on community feedback, to be held for programme risks throughout the year. And if that's not required, that budget is going to be returned to the community. So this is just to give you an overview of how the budget looks. The lion's share goes into roadmap development and then core infrastructure maintenance. How's the budget worked out? Well, we've developed it on the basis of $299,000 per FT as a reasonable estimate, but actual costs, and that's based on the IOE cost, so apologies to IOE, they've provided us with an estimate there. Actual costs will be negotiated directly with suppliers, perhaps per milestone. Any surplus is going to be returned to the community. So this is not a budget that has to be spent. It's going to be well managed. Effort is calculated based on known core developer capacity. We've added in known necessary infrastructures as reported to the TSC during 24 by IOE, etc., adding in the TSC operational costs and the contingency. And use the contingency budget will be reported to the community. So we won't just be dipping into that unless it is absolutely essential. So why do we think the TSC proposal is needed? Well, it's crucial to establish long-term stability. Users, developers, investors need certainty on maintenance of developer plans. Continuity can be ensured if, for example, in the unlikely event, hopefully, that suppliers withdraw or fail. Community roadmap development needs to be under community priorities, not those set by a supplier or consortium. Gaps need to be identified and filled. All existing infrastructure, of course, needs to be maintained for the general benefit of the community ecosystem. We need to make sure, for example, that we're dealing with the necessary maintenance of hardware wallets and Daedalus and other components. Community involvement is essential in this process. Good technical input is needed for long-term sustainability. This is actually a constitutional requirement, and so the TSC believes it will fulfill this role. And finally, we believe that good structure is necessary to develop the required programme in a sensible and sustainable way. So the TSC, in putting the proposal together, makes a number of commitments. Commits to conduct open tenders to the wider community. It commits to review submitted proposals and work with proposals to refine project proposals in order to achieve the best possible outcomes. And that's going to be essential regardless of the budget discussions. It will assess the software readiness levels to determine the initial and final expected state of the project proposal, make sure all work is identified. It will assess developer effort and team quality to ensure that projects are properly resourced that deliver good value for money. And in addition, it will work with Intersect and project proposals to build technical milestones and define sign-off criteria, ensure that proposed work is properly communicated, providing regular updates to the GREPs and general Cardano community, ensure that critical maintenance is carried out in a timely and efficient manner, consult GREPs and community on roadmap priorities and make adjustments, and return unused funds to the Treasury for future allocations. So what do we believe the main advantage of the TSC approach? Encourages competition, ensures flexibility, establishes a coherent long-term programme of work, and it's ready to go. So this is a budget proposal that could be put, we think, on chain if it needed to. Hopefully not. So further information provided in the presentation, including links to the budget proposal, questions that have been asked, etc. So thank you very much.